Hello everyone and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and music production. This is lesson 2.13. In this lesson we're going to talk a little bit more about this EQ DJ, how exactly it's working, and how we could create our own without actually using the EQ DJ. So for a lot of you, you're wondering, why are we doing this? Why are we actually covering some of these things? And I think it's very, very important that we understand how any device is working. Now, is that necessarily practical right away? No, it's not, but there are various applications to these things. For example, when we're covering these topics, like on a 3-band EQ unit like what we have here, if we use our head a little bit, we could think, oh, well, we can use that beyond DJing. If, for example, we wanted to take a sound and process different areas of the frequency spectrum independently. So, I mean, there really are so many applications to these things. I'm covering the most obvious ones now, and as we move further and further down the road, we'll be doing things that are a little less obvious, but using all of these same skills. So you have to walk before you can run. And let's just review what we looked at last video. So I can open up my span here, and we can see the frequency content and the various amplitudes going on. If I jump ahead, we can get to the kick drum. And now I want you to notice what happens when I cut the lows and I cut the highs. So we're left with a mid-range of frequencies. And what you can see is that on the left and on the right, a lot of frequencies have been cut out and they're gone. How is that happening? It's happening with filtering. And filtering is just taking unwanted frequencies and cutting them out. All right, that's as easy as it is. And we can look at what a filter looks like by just going in here, adding to our audio effects, selecting filter. And this basic filter gives us a variety of choices. I can turn off the EQ DJ if I want everything back in for right now. Let's open this all the way up. And now we're back to our default, only it's turned it down by 6 dB. You can double click, select 0, and now we have just our regular track back in. No changes at all. Now, when we look at our EQ DJ and we just focus on the low end here, let's see what it looks like. Okay, interesting. I wonder if I use a filter, if I can get something very similar. Let's see. Right now, I am on a low-pass filter. If I bring the cutoff down, it's just gonna cut off high frequencies, depending on how low I go with my cutoff. So let's go really low, maybe around 200. If I wanna make it steeper, all I will do is select this low-pass 4. And you'll see how more of the frequency spectrum goes away. And now, we're pretty close, right? Just using that low pass filter. Now, what about the high end? Let's see what that looks like. All right, so maybe we can come up with something similar using a filter. So now I'm using a high pass filter, so as I pull this cutoff up, the low frequencies are going to be cut off and the high frequencies are going to pass through. Let's see if we can come up with something similar. That sounds a little steeper in the EQ DJ, so maybe I'll select our 4-pole. That sounds pretty similar to me. Now, what about our mid-range? So we're gonna need a different type of filter for our mid-range. And it looks like there's an image on here that might give us a similar result. So let's check that out. It's called a bandpass filter. And again, it looks like we're getting way too much of the frequency spectrum in here. So let's use a sharper filter. cuts off more sharply on the left and the right, obviously. Maybe I can just increase the resonance on this one. So with our mid, we're having a little bit more difficulty using just this simple filter. But the idea here is the same. These three bands are all just filters. And on a DJ filter, they're typically all bandpass filters. So we did use our low pass and our high pass filters, but I could actually use a bandpass and just focus in on the low end if I wanted to. Right, so for the most part, we're just getting, let's go to the 4. So we're still only getting low end information. I could bring this up and now we're in mid range and then up into the high range, just like that. Now, what if when I'm working with my DJ EQ, I want to boost a certain range or cut a certain range? Very easy, I just take my knob and I increase the highs, or I decrease them. You can see what's happening there on the frequency spectrum. Now, with my filter, I can do the exact same thing. If we're right now focused on the highs, I can take our post EQ and I can either jack it up or cut it. Right? Very, very simple. So what if I wanted to create my own? I could do it in a few ways. One would be to use 3 filters and focus each one of those filters on a different band of frequencies. But I'm going to show you one that's a little bit more visual for us, and that's going to be using the EQ5. So let's pull up the EQ5, and we can see our whole frequency spectrum going across. We're only going to need 2 points. We're going to create 3 bandpass filters and have them all working independently. So I'm gonna just get rid of 2, 3, 4, and this one will be our low end. So I'm going to bring in a high pass 24. Let's drop this down pretty much all the way to the bottom, 20, 21, 22, that's fine. Take our 5, low pass 24. Let's bring that down, and we have our split here at 175, so let's set this to 175 or thereabouts. All right, now if we listen back, a little more if we wanted. All right, that works for me. I'm gonna add another EQ5, and now this time with this one, I'm gonna hold the shift button, and then I'm gonna drop it on top of our other EQ5s that we're creating FX layers. All right, so now we have 2 layers. If I play this back, it's just gonna be the full song with the low end like doubled, because we're still allowing this bit of the low end to come through, but in this EQ5, we still have the full frequency spectrum. So let's use this second one to get our mid-range. I'm gonna call this one low. I'll rename this one mid. And again, I'm just going to select a high pass 24 and a low pass 24, and just to be good, we're gonna get rid of all the other bands. So let's set this around 195 is what I'm gonna do. And on the other side, again, we have 2 5K, so a little overlap won't kill anybody. But with these actual DJ filters, they're really designed to make those overlaps, you know, as small as possible. So now if we play back, we're only gonna hear the lows and the mids. So now I can add one more EQ5. And with this one, this is just going to be my high end. So let's bring this up around the 2.5 mark. And this low pass 24, we'll just bring that up as high as possible. So right at that 20K. So now if we listen back, we should have the full frequency spectrum. All right, and if I want to get rid of one section, I can just mute it out. So now we're just hearing the mids. Now we're just hearing the lows. And now we're just hearing the highs. And we're not even using this EQ DJ at all. So the last step is, how could we increase or decrease the level? Well, we could actually just use our outputs here, and that's probably what we're gonna do. So if I wanna boost my low end, for example, I can solo it, play us back. And I could then increase, oops, I'm on the wrong one, I'm sorry guys. I could increase the output here. And you may not be able to hear that, so let's do it with the mid-range. And if I wanted, I could just create a few knobs to do this for me. So I'm going to expand this FX layer out so I can see my macros. And now what I'm gonna do is put this down to 0 right now. Let's stop the track and let's put all of them down to 0 on the outputs. You could actually set these to bipolar as well, but I'm just gonna do it this way for the sake of convenience. And now if I click this, I can select my output, and just by dragging up, I can get the full range. All right, so I'll click that off, and I'll double click, rename this. This is our lows. Let's go to our second one here. We'll map this. These are our mids, and we'll do our last one. Oops. And these are our highs. So now if I play back, we're not really gonna hear anything. If I bring all of these to 50%, we should be back at about our regular level. So what I noticed is these outputs, they don't go all the way down to negative infinity. So that's why we're still hearing stuff. But we could now do a basic mix using these 3 knobs here, and they're doing exactly the same job as the 3 knobs in our EQ DJ. So if I wanna bring the lows down a little bit, increase the mids. I could do it just like that. And one really fun trick you can do is add an EQ3 on the end of this, or EQ DJ, I'm sorry. And you're actually getting to see your levels in here because it's coming after our device. So if I want to kill the lows, or bring them way down, it'll actually show up on this. Actually, we're getting feedback controls right here, which is even more useful, isn't it? All right, so that just about does it for this lesson. What we've done is we've taken a look at different filters and then also how to create our own EQ DJ using things built into Bitwig. So I hope that was a little bit of fun for you guys. I know I had fun just doing that. And I'll catch you again in the next lesson.